Hello, everybody. Welcome to the It Hurts to Mom podcast. I'm Lauren Rose, and today we're talking to Shannon Savage-Howie. Shannon is a radiant mom raising three spirited boys under the warm California sun. Nestled in the embrace of family life, Shannon and her husband dance through the challenges of maintaining connection while he embarks on work adventures around the world. Several years ago, life took an unexpected turn when Shannon was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Undeterred, she charts the course of motherhood amidst the unpredictable waves of her health. Beyond the walls of her Southern California home, Shannon dons the hats of a contemplative coach and a nurturing yoga instructor. With a heart for healing, she extends her warmth and wisdom into the realm of substance abuse treatment, offering spiritual care. Shannon's own experiences with illness have not only shaped her character, but also transformed the way she connects with others. As a contemplative coach, she brings a unique blend of empathy, understanding, and strength to her clients, creating a space where growth, healing, and grace abound. For a deeper dive into Shannon's transformative work, explore www.ransackedsoul.com. There you'll discover a welcoming sanctuary where Shannon's wisdom and warmth unfold, offering tools for contemplative and embodied practices. Thank you for coming on. That was a beautifully written bio. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Probably the best bio I've ever read on here. So
Wow. Well, thank you.
I love it.
Great.
So tell us more about yourself and your chronic pain and illness.
Yeah. So like I said in the bio, I have three kids. I have three little boys. They're 8, 10, and 12. And we live in Southern California, and I am married. And I got diagnosed about 3 years ago with undifferentiated connective tissue disease, which is, a very common diagnosis for autoimmune stuff that they don't want to pin down. So what I am treated for and talked to as though I have is lupus, and still don't have an official lupus diagnosis, but I think that's really common in the world of lupus. And so the last several years now, I've just been trying to navigate, what does this mean for my body? What does it mean for my life? What does it mean for my family? And yeah, it's been a journey so far.
Yeah, I've got autoimmune disease as well. They think that it's rheumatoid arthritis, but again, it's kind of like, well, we're not exactly sure. So they thought I might have lupus as well, but those tests came back negative, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
But RA is not that fun either. How do you think chronic pain has changed you? You talk about your own experiences shaping your character and how you connect with others. Give me some examples of that.
Yeah, so I think there's probably several layers to this, one of the ways it's changed me is that I kind of just feel like I have this new passenger in my life all the time, that just kind of is always either on the forefront or on the back of my mind, depending on whether I'm flaring or not, or, but I have to pay attention to how sunny it is outside all the time. I have to, which I never had to worry about before other than sunglasses, but I have to constantly be aware of the weather. I have to kind of do these energy checks throughout my day of like, oh, I actually don't think I have the energy for for this thing before me, so it's always running in the back of my mind of, this is always a possibility, or this could cause a flare, or, is this a flare? What is that happening? So in that way, it's changed just kind of how much attention it takes up. But also, in another way that has changed me, kind of the opposite side of this, is that because I don't know when I'm gonna flare, or, with lupus, it could be, it could take a real bad turn at some point. It could go into remission at some point. There's just this real unpredictable nature to it. And so I have just tried to embrace a little bit of life and what I want to do and places I want to go and things I want to accomplish, because I feel like I can't take time for granted in that capacity, so if I want to go and see something, I'm kind of in this space of, I don't want to wait 10 years to do that, because I don't know if my body will be able to do it in 10 years, or, so in that regard, I've like started taking some of these trips that have kind of always been on my bucket list, and I'm just doing them because I don't want to never do them, And you asked about how it changes how I connect with others, and that's also kind of got a lot of layers to it as well. In my work life, it actually has helped me connect in deeper ways. I teach yoga in drug and alcohol treatment, which is kind of a niche place to teach that. But they're constantly in this place where their bodies feel very foreign to them because they're really brand new. A lot of them are detoxing. And so the class I teach is really gentle, and it really intentionally invites them to just be present and show their body a lot of grace. And I think since I have had my own diagnosis and my body, shows up so different from day to day, that I think I have more grace in that space of, yeah, if your body can't do this today, listen to your body, because our bodies change and they do different things. And I think I just have a little bit more space to hold for people in that regard. So there is a little bit different connection there. But I think in my social life, it's been a weird place to find connection because I felt really blindsided when I got diagnosed. I had zero idea this was coming, it just kind of hit me. And I didn't know what I was looking at until I went through a whole bunch of tests and all sorts of things. I had no idea. And so I live with feeling a little bit of responsibility to not be silent about what I experience, because if people don't have to be blindsided, or they can have better questions to ask when they experience health concerns, I think that's better. But I also think, I walk this fine line of, I don't want to overshare and be someone who seems like I'm like trying to get attention for what's going on with me, or like I need sympathy or anything, because I'm certainly not looking for any of that. So I try to ride this line of like, yeah, I don't feel good today because these things are happening, right? Or I don't want to tell you that because I don't need the attention from it, I don't know if you've had any experiences like that, but it's kind of a back and forth. Should I, shouldn't I?
Definitely. I think one of the hardest parts about having chronic pain, chronic illness, two things really. One is, like you mentioned, the unpredictability of it all. There's like very little control we have over our pain.
Exactly.
But the second thing I think is really difficult is just how isolating and lonely it feels. And I mean, I deal with it every single day. Like earlier today, my husband was asking me, what was the matter with me? And I made a comment, something to the effect of, oh, I'm just hurting, the usual stuff. And it's really hard to know, kind of like, when do I tell him I'm in a lot of pain, and when do I just not burden him or my daughter or my family or my friends or whomever it is with those details, because I don't want to be the person who's always bringing the room down, who's always being negative. And people
Right.
are always like, well, you're such a drag all the time, you always feel miserable. Okay, well, I usually feel miserable, but I don't want to sound like I usually feel miserable. So
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely a fine line to walk. I totally get that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So and sometimes I mess it up and I'm like, oh, that was too much. They weren't ready for
Oh,
that. But other times I'm like, you know what? I think, I was walking with a friend the other day, and I was just saying, I experienced this and this is this. And she was like, I have lupus too. And I was like,
oh,
I never
wow.
would have known more of this information, And then we can now have these great conversations of, oh, what was that doctor's appointment like for you? Oh, I understand. Like, it's opened this door for communication that feels less isolating, right? To say it sometimes, but you just never know how it's going to land with people.
A-
And
Yeah, absolutely. Because I do know one or two people in my life, not so much a big part of my life anymore, but they seem to like being negative as a way to get attention.
Mhm.
And I feel like I'm the opposite. Like I don't want a lot of attention, especially if it's going to be negative attention. I don't want
Mhm.
people, like I said, thinking that I'm just always negative and miserable all the time.
Right.
So I think that's great. You've got, a little part of a community started. I've got a community of women we meet every other week, and it's specifically for people, for women with chronic pain.
Well, that's
And so
wonderful.
we do have that community, and we do get to let out exactly how we're feeling without having to worry about, oh, they're just going to think we're complaining, oh, they're just going to think, we're being over dramatic, or they're just going to think we're using this for attention, because we all know what it's like. And that's been
Right.
really helpful to all of us, I think.
I'm sure it has. And to show up in a space where you just don't have to explain yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really powerful all by itself, or like people just get it, you
Hmm.
know? Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it must be difficult raising three kids. So you've got three, fairly young children, 8, 10, and 12. Well, your husband's traveling around the world for work. What challenges do you experience trying to parent with chronic pain?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, he's gone for typically months at a time. So
Wow.
he's like gone, gone, gone. um, and so a lot of times I'm not a single parent by any stretch. I have a lot of support from him, and I have we are financially stable. All of that is good, but I do call myself a solo parent a lot, and I am doing it alone a lot of times. And kids, even though one of mine is even 12, he's getting older, but they don't have the ability to see when your tank is empty. They can't read it. Even if
Yeah.
you tell them specifically, my body can't do this right now, they just, they're in their own space all the time. And so I'll go through days and days where I literally don't sit down until they're in bed.
Mm.
And it doesn't matter how I feel because they don't care how I feel. And they're great kids. They're wonderful, right? It's not that they're being selfish, it's that they're kids, and that's how it is. Homework has to get done. And so I think one of the best things I've done for myself is lowered my bar. I just if I don't feel like making dinner because I don't have it in me, I order it and I don't feel bad about it. And we all get by just fine. We all survive it. And if I have to put them on screens because I I can't do anything, right?
Yeah.
I just let it go. I, you know, we're just not gonna make life harder than it has to be right now because we're working hard to get through it, right? So my bar has come way down, and I also don't push my kids into very many activities, um, really intentionally, because what we don't need is an overloaded schedule, and
Mm.
part of that is my own kind of lifestyle choice. Like I don't none of us in our family are super into being over committed on things, but also it helps me manage my health a lot better when I'm not like, how many places do I have to take all my kids today at what times? And I don't have to think about that when we're not overdoing it. And that helps me a lot. And not everybody probably agrees with that sort of choice. I live in a highly overcommitted area where everybody's families are doing 45 things all the time nonstop, and we don't keep up with it, and we don't try to keep up with that. So
Yeah, we're the same way. I remember my daughter had a preschool friend, and she was in like literally 5 different extracurricular activities. She was like in dance and soccer and gymnastics and piano, and I can't even remember what else. And I just remember thinking that's a lot for like a 4-year-old, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Like if you want to do those things, maybe thinking about doing them one at a time,
right.
or something different. We're definitely not the overcommitted type of family
Hmm.
either, because we really all thrive on our different forms of alone time or quiet time. So I like to rest. My husband likes to watch TV, and my daughter likes to be on her screen or playing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how all three of us rejuvenate and get our energy back
Mm-hmm.
and get our ability to deal with the world back.
Yeah.
So quick.
I also, one other thing that is probably really unpopular that we are going through right now, um, is that we are rehoming our dog. She is super high maintenance, particularly energy wise. She has to have someone getting her energy out constantly. And I I can't. I can't on my own do it. She's just not a fit for my health and our family. And I know there's like so much shaming on the internet when you try to rehome a dog, but the reality is her life and our life is going to be so much better when we live where we're supposed to live and how we're supposed to live. And so we are in the process that she's going to move to a farm next week. And
Oh,
yeah, we found a really good home for her. I mean, that was a really
that's great.
intentional thing we did. But sometimes you have to make those hard choices when you don't have the capacity to hold everything. You have to decide what you can and can't hold, and this was one of our decisions.
I think that's brilliant because the dog's going to be happier
Mhm.
and, things in your life are going to settle down some. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think so too.
So maybe it's unpopular with some people, but I completely agree. It's not like you're giving away your 10-year-old because
Right,
he,
right.
he he needs too much attention or something like
Right,
that.
right. Kids over pets for sure, right? Yeah.
Right. And your health over
Mhm.
a lot of other things too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have a blog post from June of 2023, and it caught my eye. It was called "Does Everything Happen for a Reason?" I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a kind of a controversial statement, and I
I
hear it a
know.
lot at work. People saying everything happens for a reason. And my short answer is no, I don't believe that. But my longer answer is that, I think oftentimes it's a statement people use to feel better when something bad happens. And I think, sometimes just bad things happen and we
Right.
don't get to know a reason for it. And sometimes even knowing a reason isn't that helpful. It doesn't change our circumstance or what we're moving through, right? I do think that we can make meaning when bad things happen. We can turn something into something meaningful. And we see people do that all the time, right? This bad thing happened and now I, dedicate my life to this thing or, whatever it is, right? But I don't think the bad thing happened by someone pulling magic strings to make you then go become this inspirational person. I just think that's a really malicious way to think about God and
Mm.
how the world works. And it's often not comforting to someone when they're actually really suffering to think, oh, there's like real purpose here. It doesn't help me when I can't do the dishes to think, but there's probably really a good purpose for this
Right.
right now. If not for me, then maybe for my kids, right? That's not helpful in those moments. And I think we live in a culture um, that really wants everything to mean something. And I think sometimes things just don't have to mean something. And I think living with chronic pain and a chronic illness, some days your biggest accomplishment is getting through the day, and to add this obligation on top of it that it has to matter and mean something and turn into something wonderful at the end of that is a little bit too far because you're really just surviving. And sometimes that's more than enough, you know. So kind of
Yeah, I
where I
think
land.
that's a really interesting perspective. I can think I fall somewhere kind of in the middle. So I don't think that, I dropped my phone for a reason, or if I drop my pencil, there's a reason for that. And I don't know that there's a reason for everything bad that happens. I do think that we can make something good out of a lot of things. Like when my dad he had brain tumors and he had brain surgery and wait a few times, but his last time he actually had a stroke during brain surgery. And of course we were like, well, is there a reason for this? I think the reason ended up being that his brain tumors continued to grow and he became more and more disoriented. So I think if he hadn't had his stroke and he hadn't been unable to get out of bed, he might have literally just gotten out of bed in the middle of the night and wandered off and we wouldn't have known what had happened. And then there's, my chronic pain and chronic illness. I guess I decided that I didn't want it to be for nothing. So I
Mhm.
started a community of women and I started a podcast. And I don't know how long either one of those things are going to last. And when they're over, they're over. I know like I'm helping people now, but I'm not going to do it forever. That's not my plan. And when these things are over, maybe there's not another reason that I've got, chronic pain and chronic illness. So I'm not exactly sure where I land on all of that, but those are just
Mhm.
some of my thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great example, right? That, this thing is happening to you. Um, and you're choosing to use it as a platform, right? You're finding community and you're creating a place for voices to be heard and shared experiences to happen. And um, we don't know why you have what you have and the struggles you have, right? Um, and still, here you are trying to make the best of it and trying to use it to better maybe other people's lives, right?
Right. And that's what I decided.
Yeah.
I decided that because I had to, lose my career and I had to stop working. And I just felt like I didn't have a purpose in life anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't work and I really couldn't take all that great care of my family because I frequently can't do the laundry and I can't do the dishes when I want them done, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just decided I want to feel like I have a purpose right now. And
Absolutely.
hopefully, once I've fulfilled this purpose, then I will still feel like I have purpose and value just for being a human being once this is
Mm-hmm.
all over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's actually something we lose sight of in our culture is that
Yeah.
you actually, all by yourself, sitting in your chair, have meaning and purpose just because you exist.
Yeah. And that's hard to remember sometimes when there's just
Mm-hmm.
so much that I can't do,
Yeah.
especially when I want to do it,
Yeah.
that I frequently feel inadequate as a
Mm-hmm.
person, as a wife, as a mother, as a friend, as a sister, all of these things.
Sure.
And so that's definitely something that I struggle with a lot.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that. I think that's probably really common for people struggling with the things like we do, right?
Yeah.
It's just what kind of mom am I if I can't do the dishes tonight, right?
Yeah.
Like there's like 5 dishes in the sink and my hands can't do it. Like, what does that mean, right? Those are hard places to sit, and still you matter and have value.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that in my head. It's just
Sure.
kind of
It's
sometimes
it's it's really hard to embody it when your body's not
yeah.
working, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it can be.
Hmm.
If you had some advice for parents with chronic pain or chronic illness of some sort, what do you think your advice would be?
I mean, the best thing I can offer anyone is to just give yourself grace upon
Mhm.
grace upon grace, right? Just be kind, be kind and be gentle to yourself because pushing through is not it's not going to be helpful in the long run, right? We can work ourselves into oblivion with these diseases just trying to keep up with something we think we're supposed to keep up with. But when something doesn't work, let yourself sit down, and don't feel bad about it. Because I know the times when I sit down and I do let myself rest, my body is so grateful that I actually listened to it, and I know that's hard. It's like I said, there are days where I just don't sit down till it's bedtime because I don't have another choice, right? With the demands of a family. But Um, but for those moments when I can, it's helpful. So, and giving myself, at the end of the day when I'm like, I should have sat down more, I have to give myself grace. Like, you did what you could today.
Yeah, I think giving ourselves grace is hugely important. I've gotten a lot better with that because of my husband and my daughter, because they're so good about
Mm,
giving me grace that for the first several years of my physical pain, I was terrible at it.
yeah.
But it's gotten better because my family's so good at it. So I'm very grateful for that. And I think listening to our bodies is also crucial because when we don't listen to our bodies learn not to trust us.
Mm-hmm.
And so much can come from that that's not
Mm-hmm.
good, including like
Right.
just being in a constant state of fight or flight, which a lot of us with chronic pain already are in.
Right.
But, sustaining that fight or flight mode because our bodies don't trust us to do what our bodies need, that's one possible consequence. So I think listening to our bodies is definitely one of my big pieces of advice for people with any kind of pain or illness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the best things for me was that I already was doing yoga and teaching yoga. And like I said, what I do is really gentle. But having a practice already where I was showing up in my body was really helpful groundwork that was laid. So when my body started sending me entirely different messages, I was able to tap into some of these tools. It took me a little time, right? Like, what's happening? Totally disorienting. But once I finally started listening, I had tools to be in my body, so that I can tune into it and I can hear it. And I don't do the crazy yoga that's fast and heated and all of that. I don't do that. I do slow, gentle. How do I show up? What do I feel? Just checking in with my body occasionally helps me hear it when it's starting to whisper something instead of waiting until it's screaming at me.
Oh yeah, and I know people with chronic pain can wait till it's screaming, not necessarily even on purpose, but because we just get so focused on what we're doing, trying to push through whatever it is, that the next thing you know, we've completely ignored all these whispers, like you call them, and we are in intense pain, whether that's migraine pain or joint pain or muscle pain or whatever it is. So
Mm-hmm.
listening to our bodies is just so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So tell us again your website and let us know where we can find out more about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a spiritual director or a contemplative coach. There are different names for a lot of the same stuff. So I meet with people one on one. I also have some groups, and I have an online course with a overview of spiritual and embodied practices to kind of introduce you to new things, as far as showing up that way. My website is ransackedsoul.com. And I also have an Instagram account under the same name. And the course is on my website. And I essentially I hold space for people asking kind of these bigger life and spiritual questions. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I'll have those links in the show notes so people can get to them easier.
Great. Yeah.
And thank you for coming on. It's been nice chatting with you.
Yeah. Thank you. This has been wonderful. Yeah. Thank you.
Um, Make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any health, parenting, or life advice. For my freebie 30 ways to relieve pain without taking a pill, go to ithurtstomom.com/tips. If you have comments, suggestions, or want to be on this podcast, just email me at ithurtstomom@gmail.com. I wish everybody a blessed and pain-free day.